welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I am ranking the books that I read in the month of February. I didn't really want to do a traditional wrap-up where I shared in-depth thoughts on any of the books that I read because I did vlog for every single week of the month of February, so you can find my in-depth thoughts on every single one of those books there. I'm going to be talking about 12 books today. I actually read a couple more than that, but some of them are for a project that I'm working on that you'll hear more about later this month. But I have 11 books that I finished that I'm going to talk about and one DNF, which is going to go probably the bottom of the pile. So we're just going to go in ascending order, starting with the book that I liked the least. The book that I liked the least was the one that I also DNF'd, and that's The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. This is just really not my kind of a story. I'm not a big fan of like domestic thrillers like this one, and this is dual timeline. I read this for the We Love Jenny readathon because this is one of Jenny's favorite books that she read last year, I think. And it's definitely a retelling of Mary Shelley and Claire Claremont and Percy Shelley and Lord Byron and that summer where they were at the villa when Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. And a lot of the details interconnect and are really, really interesting, but it just wasn't for me. Some of the content and also just some of the way that the story went, it just really wasn't for me, and I was really, really hating it, so I decided to DNF it. All the other books that I'm going to talk about are around 3 stars and up, so the next one is When the Day Comes by Gabrielle Myers. I read this for my in-person book club, and it's a Christian historical fiction / romance involving a time-traveling girl who, when she falls asleep in one place, she wakes up in the next. And this just really isn't my kind of story, I don't think, which is unfortunate because I think the idea was good and I think that it works for a lot of people, but I'm not a huge historical fiction girly anyway. I'm kind of picky about my historical fiction, so I think that that really didn't help it. Almost every single person in my book club absolutely loved this book and went on in the series and just thought it was phenomenal. So I'm definitely an outlier here, but there was a lot of things that I just couldn't get past, and the way that I think the book handled certain traumas I really didn't like. The next book I'm going to talk about is Last of the Talons by Sophie Kim. This is a YA romantasy that's kind of a dark romantasy that takes some notes from Korean mythology, which is why I was interested in it. And also this is a book that Jenny was reading and she thought that I would really like. And it was fine. It wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't great. I think I would enjoy it if it was a K-drama more than I did in book format. I thought elements of it were fun, but some of it was just so over the top and cheesy, and particularly the romance, and it was just very, very trope heavy, which is common with YAs. So not a favorite, but I did have fun with it. Also at around 3 stars is The Pickwick Papers by Charles Dickens. I read a little over half of this in January and then finished it in February. I read it with Penny and Chantel, and it was fun. There was a lot of humor in it, but it was really episodic, and while there were moments of beautiful writing, it just didn't have the overarching story and character development that I've come to love and expect from Charles Dickens. This was his first published novel, so I'm sure that that's why, but it's not a favorite. It wasn't bad, but it also wasn't great. Next up is the book that I read for my Read or Writ project, and that was Then, This Is Now by S.E. Hinton. This is a companion novel to The Outsiders, so it does have an appearance of Ponyboy in it, but other than that, it's different characters, but it takes place in the same town. The storylines don't really intersect. And it was good. It was really depressing. I felt like the writing was decent, but it really hasn't stuck with me the way that The Outsiders did. Next up was the next volume in a manga series that I'm currently reading, and that's Kuma 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 Bear. I read volume 2, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really lighthearted, really, really fun. I think I liked the first volume just a little bit more than this one, but I still thought it was fun. It's about a girl who basically becomes trapped in this video game, and she's wearing this bear suit that gives her magical powers within the video game. So she can't take it off because she needs those abilities, but also no one takes her seriously because she's wearing a bear suit. In volume 2, she's actually able to summon these adorable bears that she can ride, and they can fight with her and all that kind of stuff. And oh my gosh, It was so cute and so wholesome and so fun. I can't wait to read volume 3. Another book that I read in the month of February for We Love Jenny was The Double by Dostoevsky. Jenny really enjoyed this novella of Dostoevsky's, and I read this with Penny and Christy, and I had a lot of fun with it. I just enjoyed it for the ride that it was. A lot of times with Dostoevsky's, I have to engage my brain more because there's a lot more that he's trying to say than what's actually on the page. And the week that I read this, I just didn't have the mental bandwidth to do that. So maybe it deserves higher than the 4 stars that I'm giving it. But I just still really enjoyed the story. I really like the whole kind of thing of he's seeing this person that looks just like him and you're wondering, is he crazy or is this really going on? And you're questioning what's really happening in the story, and I really like that kind of a format in a story. Next up, I read a nonfiction called Fast, Feast, Repeat by Jen Stevens. This is a book about intermittent fasting, and I thought it was really, really interesting. I loved the way that she presented the scientific benefits of fasting, not just for weight loss, but also just in general for your body and what your body does when you are in a fasting state and how that can help you and your health in the long run. I thought it was presented really clearly, but I did think that it got a little bit repetitive and some of the conversational tone was just funny to me, and it wasn't really supposed to be. So I'm putting this in a 4-star rather than a 5-star because I think it could have been a little bit shorter than it was, even though it's not a long book, but it had just some great information with lots of scientific studies and stuff. Super glad I read it, and I'm really looking forward to implementing some of it in my life. So this teeters on the edge between 4 and 5 stars, and I'm not really sure where I should put it because normally I reserve 5 stars for absolute perfection of books, and this did derail for me a little bit towards the ending, and that's The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith. But honestly, I read this with Dia and Stephanie, and all 3 of us just absolutely adored our time with this book, and it was just so wonderful. The characters were so good. The humor was so good. I just enjoyed pretty much every second of reading this until I got to the end. And then there were moments of just complete conveniences with the ending, which didn't bother me quite as much, but then some of the conveniences were just not a satisfactory ending for some of the characters, and I was a little disappointed with that. So I'm not sure I can give it a perfect 5 stars because I usually reserve those for just like top of the top. But this was one of my favorite books I read this month. So I'm putting it here because it kind of teeters between 4 and 5 stars for me. Next up is another manga series that I'm continuing in, and that is Attack on Titan. I read volume 8 with Christy this month, and oh gosh, this was such a fun volume, and I feel like we finally got some answers for some of the questions that we've been asking for 8 volumes. So I cannot wait to go on to volume 9 and find out what discoveries are ahead. Another 5-star is one that I actually read most of this in January, but I did finish it in February 3rd. So I'm including it in this wrap up, but that is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 4 of the Stormlight Archive. Book 5 comes out in December, and I don't even know what to do with myself now that I'm done reading this. I read this with my friend Whitney Drew, and oh my gosh, it was so fun to just text back and forth about our thoughts as we were reading this because there were so many reveals and so many things happening. A lot of people, this is their very least favorite by a lot for the Stormlight Archives. And I don't get the hate. I actually really, really enjoyed my time with it. I enjoyed spending so much time with Navani in particular and all of the scientific discoveries that she was making. I just thought that that was so interesting and so fun. And I felt like, in particular, Shallan and Kaladin had some major character arcs that were incredible, and I loved the character development. So Brandon Sanderson's world building and character work is just top notch for me. So I really enjoyed this one. I'm down to my last 2 books. So coming in at number 2 for the month is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This book is so, so good. This was also inspired by We Love Jenny, but it was also recommended to me by one of my patrons. So I did a Patreon vlog for it that was spoilery, and I read it with my friend Stephanie as well. I read all the things with Stephanie this month. And this is a horror retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's Fall of the House of Usher, which I also read this month. So I'm just going to stick these 2 together in the same spot because that just makes sense. I read them at the same time and they are related. I just enjoyed this so much. I thought that T. Kingfisher did such a good job of all these respectful nods to the original story while still making it her own. And it was so creepy, and the best way and the way that a horror wimp like me can totally handle. But it was just so like unsettling, and you feel so uneasy without knowing what's going on for so much of the book, and that is totally my jam. I loved the character development and the world building. I thought it was so fun. That leaves me with my number one book for the month, and this is a reread, so maybe it's cheating to put it in the first spot, but I'm putting it in the first spot anyway. I don't care. The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is literally my 13th time reading this book, and it's just as delightful now as it was the first time that I read it. So I just love it. I love these characters. I love the journey that they're going on. I love the relationships that they have with one another. I love the poetic writing. I love the nature descriptions. I love the meandering that we do at times, because it always just feels like a delight to be meandering with Tolkien anywhere. So even when the story is slowing down, I still love my time there. And I just love everything about it. There were so many moments that I had forgotten were in the book that I thought just were from the movie. There were moments that I laughed. There were moments I got emotional. I feel just so attached to everyone in this story, and I am going to be so sad when I am done rereading this trilogy. I've been reading it with my Patreon, and in March we're reading Return of the King. And what am I going to want to do the instant I finish Return of the King? Pick Fellowship of the Ring back up and do it again. And unfortunately, my schedule will not allow me to do that. So I'm going to be so sad when this is over, but every single moment of this reread has just been perfection, and talking with my Patreon about it has been amazing and just enhanced the experience that much more. Well, that's my ranking of the books that I read in February. I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. What have you been reading lately in February? What was your favorite book? Have you read any of the books that I talked about here? If so, I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.